Hello and welcome to Unprofessional Engineering. My name is James.
And you got Luke.
Luke, tackling a simple topic today.
Simple.
How does nuclear fusion work?
Of course, maybe there's a little bit of hocus pocus from like Hogwarts, but I'm assuming that's where this energy comes from, is purely magical and fantastical.
Yeah, absolutely. Not exactly.
No?
Pretty close.
Okay.
A couple more details, minor details. So if you haven't checked out our fission versus fusion episode, go and do that and then come back and listen to this one. And if you refuse, here's a super quick fission recap for you.
Okay.
How about that? So current nuclear reactors use nuclear fission to generate power. And so this fission process, you get energy from splitting apart one atom into two atoms. So that's pretty easy. In a conventional reactor, high energy neutrons split heavy atoms of uranium. I think we mostly know that, right? Yielding all sorts of energy, which is nice, but also radiation and a whole bunch of radioactive waste, which turns out isn't exactly good to have sitting around. Nuclear fusion, on the other hand, is the opposite. So there you go. Those were the details. It's over. Good episode.
Well,
okay, so not quite.
No, not quite. I feel like we need to give fusion a little more.
In fusion, you get energy when you take two atoms and join them into I'm not going to say that, into one atom.
Like
form one.
Like how simple is that, right?
Two becomes one. Absolutely.
It's quite easy if you're the sun or a star.
Absolutely. They do it all the time.
Doing this on planet Earth apparently is a little more difficult, and that's where the crux of our discussion
focus today,
James.
That's right. So in a fusion reactor, you're using hydrogen atoms to come together to form helium atoms. If you haven't checked out our table of elements, periodic table of elements episodes, do that. Not that we covered hydrogen or helium in any of those yet, but they're still interesting. And this, when you combine them, they create vast amounts of energy, like way more than this nasty old fission process that we have. It's the same kind of reaction, as you mentioned, that happens in the sun, and also that powers hydrogen bombs, if you want to be a little more destructive about things. So why would you want to do this? It's clean, it's safer.
Super clean, super safe.
Efficient, and there's like an abundant amount of power that comes out of this.
Apparently, apparently, like I saw something where they talked about, so obviously whenever like a current nuclear reactor, when things go bad, there's just this chain reaction. It just keeps happening and happening and happening.
Right. That's when all the bad happens.
And all the bad happens. Apparently, like if one of these fusion reactors, there's a handful of them in the world. If these go wrong, it just kind of dissipates. It just kind of, the plasma cools, and next thing you know, you're done. You start it back up again.
I mean, and these ones that are out there, they're not like really powering anything. They're still like, they're trying their best, right?
So we've achieved fusion. The problem is we've achieved fusion to make like this much energy,
right?
And it requires like 10 times the amount of energy, and it's billions of dollars. So it's totally not an efficient way right now.
Right.
So,
okay. So there are a few types of fusion reaction out there. So to get into a little bit more detail, this is mostly involving the isotopes of hydrogen called deuterium and tritium.
Yep. Nailed it.
Proton-proton chain. This is numero uno, and not really something we care about, but I'll mention it anyways. This sequence is is the predominant fusion reaction scheme in stars, like in the sun. Two pairs of protons form to make two deuterium atoms. Each deuterium atom combines with a proton to form a helium-3 atom. Two helium-3 atoms combine to form a beryllium-6, which is very unstable. So that's good in this case. Beryllium-6 decays into two helium-4 atoms. It all sounds like a lot of numbers.
It does.
And these reactions produce tons and tons of energy particles, protons, neutrons, all that good stuff, and radiation. So the light that we see from the sun, or gamma rays and other bad stuff that shoots
turn you
into
into the Hulk.
That turn you into the Hulk. Now, the ones that we care about more are the deuterium-deuterium reactions. So again, two deuterium atoms combine to form helium-3 and a neutron. And then the other one, deuterium tritium reactions, one atom of deuterium and one atom of tritium combine to form the helium-4, much like above mentioned, and a neutron. And most of the energy released in this form is high energy neutrons. So why is it, I mean, it feels simple, but why is it that we really only care about those two? Well, in our world, the first one, deuterium tritium, is going to be the first one that we can achieve. And then deuterium is going to be where we really focus, because that's where we're able to actually produce stuff from like seawater. Obviously, we have an abundant supply of seawater, and you can derive deuterium from seawater. Unlike tritium, I think that comes from lithium or something like that. I have it in my notes somewhere.
They said that there's potentially, they don't know, there's potentially only 20 kilograms of tritium on the entire planet. And the stuff that is here now is already in a nuclear warhead in most cases. So
we've already used it all up to blow stuff up.
Yeah.
Whoops. Sorry about that. So there's certain conditions, Luke, that have to be met for fusion to happen. When hydrogen atoms fuse, bloop, the nuclei have to come together. But it turns out that
they don't
protons,
like to do that.
They don't. They really don't like to do that.
You know why?
Why?
They're both positively charged. So they don't want to, they literally push as far away as they can possibly be from one another.
That's it's not, it's like magnets.
Exactly.
Have you, Luke, ever smashed your finger between two magnets that like snap together and get one of those gross like blood blisters on your finger?
I've never messed with like they kind of scare me. I saw something whenever I was a kid. When I saw something when I was a kid about a kid that swallowed a magnet, like when I was really little, and he swallowed like a rare earth magnet that his dad had in his workshop. Like a kid from our school did this, and he had to have like major surgery. It was
so you don't screw with magnets.
Yeah.
I didn't know that about you. Huh.
Yeah, I'm afraid of magnets.
I don't like bread mold. I have like an irrational fear of bread mold because when I was little, I saw some TV show about someone who like inhaled bread mold spores and it like grew throughout their sinuses and they had to like get their face cut off and like scooped out. Yeah. So now I'm like terrified of it. And my wife makes fun of me all the time.
Okay.
Before we go any further, Luke, well, one thing first before we go any further, two conditions have to be met. You need a super high temperature and you need a super high pressure to make this magic happen.
Like crazy high temperature.
Isn't that like a diamond? Don't you need really high pressure to make a diamond?
Oh, thanks. Like me, like I'm a diamond.
You shine like a
diamond in the rough.
Before we go any further, let's take a break for a word from our sponsor.
We didn't say anything fun or catchy yet so far today, so I have nothing funny to say about a sponsor.
De Beers, the diamond company, right? Is that still the
Jared,
diamond
the Galleria
company?
of Jewelry.
There you go. No sponsor this week, but we do have shout outs. Wade S is shout out numero uno, HVAC tech that's starting to get his engineering degree in mechanical engineering.
There we go.
Way to go. Good choice. He'd like an episode on HVAC systems, probably so he can laugh at our lack of knowledge there, but that's okay. So it's been added to the list. But wait, if you haven't checked out our episode on Carrier, the AC inventor, you should do that.
That's a good one.
Second shout out, Frank P. Our transmission episode inspired him to write in our manual transmission one.
Oh, okay.
And he admits he's that guy. He schooled me a little bit about manual transmissions and the cars he drives, but he's an engineer that builds cryogenic vaporizers, which I had to look up because I assumed that was like where Walt Disney's head is or whatever. It sounds way cooler than anything that we do. So very cool, Frank. If any of you want a shout out on our shows, if you have some episode ideas, if you want to give us big money, if you want to send us diamonds, anything like that, email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com.
And don't forget to subscribe, like, and share. And we always love when you leave comments too, so make sure you do that. And as always, you can tell your smart devices to play the Unprofessional Engineering Podcast.
That's so nice. So when I was on the road, Luke, I was looking for anyone wearing an Unprofessional Engineering t-shirt. I know that someday I'll eventually see this. Granted, there's like 300 or 400 people in the world that have this t-shirt.
It's gotta happen, right?
Right, eventually. So I told you, high temperature, high
Like
pressure.
real high temperature, like the sun. And I don't know how they measure it. Apparently, I don't know how they measure this. The sun is 14 million degrees Celsius. Like, so there's no way they know this.
They're like, yeah, it feels like that.
Yeah.
Like,
there's no way they know it's 14 million degrees Celsius.
Yeah, I don't understand that either. And my brain can't even comprehend that number, right?
Mm-hmm.
So the high temperature gives the hydrogen atoms enough energy to be like, I don't care that we hate each other. We're going to come together anyways. Fusion requires temperatures of about 100 million Kelvin, which that just sounds like a made up number to me. And somehow this is approximately like 6 times hotter than the sun's core, like you were saying. Like, again, how do you know that? And also, what? Like,
yeah,
it's silly.
So the other thing too that the temperature does is the temperature takes the neutrons and actually flings them off. Like it actually destroys that, and then the temperature and the pressure is so high now those atoms can now merge together.
Yeah, merge in a marriage, in a union of atoms
in plasma.
And that's another thing, right? The hydrogen is a plasma, not a gas at this temperature and pressure. So that's interesting. The sun achieves these temperatures because of its large mass and the force of gravity. So we mentioned the sun has a lower temperature.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we don't have that kind of gravity going on here. So we have to use like microwaves, lasers, other things to make this temperature happen. The high pressure, on the other hand, squeezes the hydrogen atoms together. They must be within 1 times 10 to the minus 15th meters of each other to fuse. Like, what?
Again,
some made up number.
Yes, yeah. I feel like this is scientific propaganda.
It is propaganda.
Making this stuff up.
We all know the Earth is flat.
No.
The sun uses its mass and the force of gravity to squeeze it together at the core. We must squeeze it together using super strong, scary to Luke magnetic fields and powerful lasers or ion beams. So I tell you what, Luke, my wife keeps our house so hot that Murraysville might be the home of the first fusion reactor. You ask my friends, like if we come over and are hanging out and we're cooking, it's like a sweat fest up in this joint. So,
yeah, I'm right there with you. So there's actually 2 types of confinements. The ones you mentioned. So the magnetic one is the one I'm deathly afraid of, and then the second one is an inertial. Am I saying that right? Inertial confinement.
I
think I'm
down
saying
here. Yes, inertial. Yep, I see it.
Yeah, inertial confinement. So we want to talk about the 2 of those and what they work like. Or do you have other stuff?
No, I'm looking through. I think that's a good place to keep it. One fun fact before we get into that, though.
Shoot.
So I mentioned that the deuterium fusion will be better for us because it's easier to extract deuterium from deuterium. Gosh, I struggle with that from seawater than to make tritium from lithium. But also deuterium is not radioactive. So the reactions will yield more energy on top of that. So that's super helpful as well. So let's go team. Okay, so magnetic confinement, is that where you're going first?
Yeah, so magnetic confinement. So the way magnetic confinement works is it uses electric current and magnetic fields to create this plasma, and these things are typically circular, the ones that I've seen, the actual reactors themselves. And the reason being, they create, it's called a torrid, I think. It's one of those circular donut things that curves that are impossible to like make a 3D model of.
Yes.
So those 2 things happen, and that is actually what confines it. And the reason they call it confinement is they're basically holding all of that in place with magnetic force and microwaves.
Yeah. Fun fact for you, Luke.
Shoot.
So the ITER project in France is using this method that you're talking about, the magnetic confinement. The reactor shape called a tokamak. It's a Russian acronym for toroidal, like you were saying, a toroidal chamber with axial magnetic field. Now, I don't know much about acronyms, but those letters do not match up to make tokamak. But maybe in Russian, that's how it works. I don't know. The International Thermonuclear Experimental Reactor, the ITER, in France, is the biggest and most ambitious attempt thus far for forcing two atoms together. It's a 25 billion with a B dollar experiment in France, and it's a joint project though between the EU, China, US, Japan, India, Korea, and Russia, I believe.
Okay.
So that's where a lot of the magic is happening. I have a picture here that shows, not that any of you can see it, that shows all of the different pieces of this magnetic confinement, but I'm not sure I'm interested in talking about that.
It looks like legitimately like something from like the Avengers, like Endgame.
For sure.
Like it's all metal and it's all curved and it's this big circular thing, and it's just
Tony Stark for sure invented this.
Yeah, like this is literally like science fiction, like coming to life. Like things. It's amazing that we're at this point. I think we're still super far away because the fusion we've been able to achieve, because we have achieved fusion in the past, but it's been like that, and it's over, and there's like nothing to benefit from it. There's no energy that you can like run a house or a car or a city.
Yeah, not sustainable.
No, exactly.
So the process, I'll go through quickly, but we've explained this process probably a dozen times on our podcast by now. So it's a little bit different at the start, right? The fusion reactor heats up a stream of deuterium and tritium fuel to form high temperature plasma. Then it squeezes the plasma so that the fusion can take place. The power needed to start the fusion reaction is thought to be about 70 megawatts, but the power yielded from the reaction is around 500 megawatts. And then it just keeps happening, right? The fusion reaction lasts between 300 to 500 seconds. So that's a ton of power. Eventually, there will be sustained fusion reactions. And so then the lithium blankets are outside of the plasma reaction chamber, absorb the high energy neutrons, bad, right, from the fusion reaction and make more tritium fuel. The blankets will also gather like heat from the neutrons. The heat's then transferred. Here's the thing we always talk about. The heat's then transferred by water cooling loop to a heat exchanger to make steam. The steam drives your electrical turbines. Got it.
There you go.
Turbines
you got it.
to produce electricity. And the steam's then condensed back into water to absorb more heat from the reactor and heat exchangers. So the same process, really. It's just that start of how you're generating that heat to turn the steam.
Yeah.
Or to make the steam.
Fun fact. Ooh. So the greatest temperature variation actually occurs in one of these reactors. So the cooling that they used goes down to negative absolute zero, which is negative 269 degrees Celsius. Absolute zero.
It was 273.15, or is that Kelvin maybe?
That's probably Kelvin. Else. So this is it's negative 269 degrees Celsius, negative, and then the high temperature is 150 million degrees Celsius.
That's a thing.
Like all of that is happening in like something the size of my house, like those two temperature ranges, and they need to do that or else this thing would like burn down the planet, is my guess.
Oh my goodness. Just like melt down into the center of the earth.
But apparently whenever things like go awry, this just kind of cools off and you're good.
Well, that's good. Yeah. Have you watched the new King Kong versus Godzilla movie?
I have not, because I don't have HBO.
Oh yeah, you don't have HBO. You don't have, yeah. Okay. Never mind. They go to the center of the earth. It's fine.
No, they don't.
Why wouldn't they? I don't know if I could say you should watch it, but anyways, before we move on to inertial confinement, how about we take a break for this week's Luke's rant?
So I'm not smart enough to have a rant specifically about fusion. So we're going to talk about my hair, James. My hair has been a topic of discussion in my household, with my friends, with my family. So I've been growing my hair out. This is the longest my hair has been since probably ever, maybe. And my daughter loves it. She said I like Brad Pitt of course I'm gonna keep it, right?
Yeah,
my wife despises it, like with a burning passion of a son. She says she's gonna, in the middle of the night, like cut it really short in like one spot and force me to like
have to.
So I have to like shave it off, and it's like at the point where it's causing marital problems. So June 10th was the date that I said that I needed to. I publicly said that was my date when I would maybe cut my hair. And I feel like if I back down from that, my word means nothing, James.
I am with you on that.
I have to do it.
You have to. I feel like you're between a rock and a hard place.
That's 2 months away from this time of recording. That's 2 months away. My wife may murder me or cut my hair between now and then.
If you're not one of our 11 YouTube listeners, you won't know this, but he has almost like a flock of seagulls kind of hairstyle going on at this point.
It's a sidewinder.
Does it do that naturally? Do you have to put something in it?
It does that naturally.
It looks good. I think I'm a fan of keeping it.
Yeah, I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So I'd love to hear our other listeners out there who have been growing their hair out during the pandemic and how their significant other has reacted to their hair growing out.
Mm-hmm.
So
I would love to hear that. Hit us up on unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. Subject line, Luke's hair. Brad Pitt.
All right.
Okay, so where were we?
Were we done with
I think so.
Are we gonna do the next type of containment?
Let's do the next containment.
So the next type of containment is called inertial containment. This one uses laser beams, pew, pew, pew,
lasers,
or ion beams to squeeze and heat hydrogen plasma. So there's actually a reactor in the United States that actually does this.
Yes, sir.
So the strongest laser in the world, I think I saw, is actually a part of the program that's working on this inertial containment to create plasma project. I don't know where it is. My guess is a super secret facility.
National Ignition Facility of Lawrence Livermore Laboratory.
Apparently it's not
Say
that
that
secret
three
now.
times fast. Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. No thanks. This one seems crazier to me, Luke. Just the concept of it, like, I get magnets squishing stuff. That makes sense to me. Shooting lasers all over the place seems made up to begin with.
So they take a solid pellet of fuel. This thing is, they say it's like somewhere like around a millimeter. So you got this little like paintball, whatever it is. It's a millimeter. It's a dot. It's a grain of sand. And then they shoot lasers at it. Like, how does the laser not, like, if this is the most powerful laser in the world, James, how does this laser not like cut through the building and drill a hole in the planet to the other side of the Earth?
Yeah, I'm with you. And let me tell you something, Luke. The only people I know that shoot lasers at stuff are stormtroopers, and they can't hit human-sized things.
They cannot.
How are we going to hit this tiny little capsule?
I don't know how they do it.
Yeah, unbelievable.
So
also, they've been doing this since the 1960s.
Yeah.
They've been trying and turns out not being real successful.
Yeah. So what happens is, so they shoot these tiny solid pellets of fuel, and they're using the deuterium tritium. And what happens whenever they shoot this is there's a ton of pressure, there's a ton of temperature change. Fusion actually occurs, but the problem is it only occurs for a couple of nanoseconds before the pellet itself basically dismantles and explodes into super small particles that so they're not capturing any of the energy from that fusion reaction. And I think that's what they're working on. They got to come up with some way of continuing this fusion reaction and begin to capture that power. But right now they are relatively unsuccessful.
Well, maybe someday.
Maybe.
I saw they shot like a record blast in like 2018, so maybe it's bigger now, but in 2018 they fired a 2.15 megajoule ultraviolet energy blast into this chamber. That doesn't mean anything to me, but it sounds really impressive.
It sounds amazing.
Yeah. Okay, so I have some applications of fusion, but not really, kind of. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
I have a list of the current containment facilities that are running currently.
Ooh, that's interesting.
So,
Let's hear it.
So magnetic, there are 3 Tataka. How'd you say it?
I think I said it like tokamak, maybe something like that.
There's 3 of them. There's the ITER, there's the T-15, and there's the Storm M, which sounds amazing. I don't know.
That one does sound the coolest.
I don't know where any of these places are. There's another one called a Stellanator. So this one is a little different design, but it still kind of creates that torrid shape ultimately. One is called Weldenstein, the HSX, and the LHD. Again, no clue where these are located.
Sound like they're naming
world.
Cars.
I feel like we don't
Cadillacs.
Exactly. I feel like we also don't want to let people know where these places are in some cases, because the last thing we need is Area 51, people storming these places.
To be fair, if somebody storms one of these reactors wearing an unprofessional engineering shirt, you and I can retire.
Yes.
So I fully support that
for
behavior.
Sure. We don't.
We don't. You're right.
Inertial confinement. So there's 2 lasers. There's the there's the NIF and the hyper with a capital H and a low P, PIE, capital H, lowercase I, PER. And then there's a ZX pitch inertial containment, and one is the Z machine. Just sounds amazing. And then there's another one which is some location in China that I do not want to pronounce because I will embarrass myself.
That's fair. I know how that goes. I embarrass myself regularly.
I know you do.
Very cool. Anything else you wanted to talk about?
That's all I had for right now.
Okay, so I titled something applications, but that's stupid. That's not the right word. The application is making electricity. That's what we really want here, right?
Yes.
Maybe time travel. Who knows? I don't know. But it's mostly for electricity. But reasons why this is super cool. Abundant fuel supply. Deuterium can be readily extracted from seawater, like we said. Excess tritium can be made in the fusion reactor itself from lithium, and somewhat available in the Earth's crust, but not really. It's safe. The amount of fuel used for fusion is really small compared to fission reactors. So this is so that we don't have all of these uncontrolled releases of energy that go crazy and melt down and cause problems. Check out our episode on Chernobyl, by the way. That was a really good one.
I have a fun fact I missed on the water piece. So 1 gallon of seawater has the potential, and they say potential because
someday
has the potential to generate the same amount of energy as 300 gallons of gasoline.
Holy cow. That's pretty impressive.
And there's no like extra bad stuff that like happens.
No extra bad stuff.
Like no extra bad stuff.
Yeah. It's clean, like you're saying.
Super
the combustion occurs in nuclear power. Fission or fusion, there's no air pollution, so that's nice. But this one provides much less nuclear waste. We said it takes way less for the reactions. So fusion reactors will not produce high-level nuclear waste like fission reactors do. So the disposal is going to be less of a problem. In addition, the waste won't be of like weapon-grade nuclear materials in this case. So that's kind of like an added bonus if you don't like war and destruction of the Earth. So that's pretty cool. And I mean, we could probably do a whole episode on the disposal of this fuel.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, like I used to design containers to ship this stuff around, and to ship not a lot of it is like an awful process. And then you got to stuff this stuff in a hole in a giant mountain in the middle of nowhere.
Or my backyard. I got room.
Or mostly Luke's backyard. That's why his grass is so lush. Like it is a big deal. But also, fun fact, Luke, NASA is currently looking into developing really small scale fusion reactors for powering deep space rockets. So fusion propulsion would have like unlimited fuel supply basically, and would be more efficient and lead to faster rockets.
And it would like go out, like it could like literally run eternally. Like it would just
you just go, and we would just travel to new Earths then.
I have a fun fact, James, that is about mining on the moon. Did you hear this one?
No, but I'm curious.
So tritium is the one where there's only like 20 kilograms on the entire planet, and most of it is in nuclear bombs. So one of the options is, I think you may have mentioned this, is to use helium-3. Well, there's not a lot of helium-3 on the planet either.
We have to do magic to make that, right?
But there's a theory that the moon because of the, millions and billions of years of solar winds that have been hitting the moon, that there may be vast quantities of helium-3 on the moon that we literally just got to go over with like a little bucket truck, pick it up, filter out, and we
Bring
could
it on home.
Yeah, so yet another reason why we should be mining on the moon.
If our boy Elon is listening, get on that, buddy. Helium-3. That's weird. So I think we all know that the moon is made of cheese.
Of course.
So
I don't know how that would work.
Yeah, I think it's a little concerning that our cheese supply would dwindle. But other than that, I'm all for it. Goodness. Okay. Anything else you want to share with our listeners, Luke?
After your cheese moon comment, I don't think I have much else.
No other value to add.
Awesome. No, I don't.
Hopefully everybody enjoyed this episode. I thought it hurt my brain a little bit, but I think it's really interesting. And I think, Luke, in our lifetime, we're going to see it happen. That's my bet.
I will. I'm not a betting man, but I will bet you $1. Okay. I think it will happen, but I think it's going to happen where like they can make fusion happen. They can capture the energy from it, but it's not going to be commercially feasible to like power homes and the world in our lifetime. I think there's just way too much technology that needs to happen between then.
We'll iron out the details of this bet.
We will.
But I feel like if one of us dies first, I guess we don't really have to worry about paying up. All right. So if any of you would like to bet with us and let us know your take on this, if you have a topic or you just want to say hi, go ahead and email us at unprofessionalengineering@gmail.com. And until next time.
See you.